Clifford Chatterley in sickness and in health.
My poor darling.
Constant, this is our new gamekeeper.
Lady,
I love you.
I'm very tired.
Few novels in the 20th century carry the weight of having a scandalous reputation and bringing about cultural change like Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. It's a book that has been whispered about, it was banned, and later defended in courtrooms. But beyond the headlines, beyond the shock of its words, lies a deeper story, one about class, intimacy, industrialization, and what it truly means to be alive. Welcome back to Sometimes and Forever with me, Denny Downing. And today we're going to peel back the layers of D.H. Lawrence's most controversial novel. We're going to consider why it mattered then and why it still matters now. Quick reminder, if you like our content, please go ahead and do me a favor. Subscribe, share it with somebody that you think might like it, and leave me a comment. It really does help others to find the channel. Thank you so much. Now let's start with the context of this novel, Lady Chatterley's Lover. It was originally published in 1928, but not in England. Lawrence had to release it privately in Italy and France, and a few copies made their way to the United States. English publishers wouldn't touch the novel. Why not? Because of its explicit sexual content and blunt language. Yes, it does have some curse words in it. As a matter of fact, when I first read the novel, I was surprised that a book written in the 1920s had these words. For a little bit, I wondered if I was reading a modern version, but no, I was reading the novel as Lawrence originally wrote it. Anyway, for decades, only heavily censored editions were available. It wasn't until the 1960s that Penguin Books published the uncensored version in Britain. So let's do a little math. The book was originally published in 1928, but it wasn't until 1960 that it was published as it was originally written, uncensored, in England. That is a whopping 32 years difference. By then, even Lawrence himself was long dead. But publishing an uncensored version of a book is one thing. Getting the authorities to accept it, well, that's quite another. The government immediately charged the publisher under the Obscene Publications Act. What followed was one of the most famous trials in literary history. Prosecutors asked the jury whether this was a book they would want their wives or their servants to read. Okay, you know I have to pause here, because the jury was being asked if they would want their wives or servants to read this book. Clearly, the prosecution was made up of men. Men who thought that women and servants were not aware of sex, and that if they were to be exposed to it through literature, they would become corrupt. That's how this sounds to me. I don't know, what do you think? Do you think that the prosecution was all male? And do you think that they really were so concerned about the corrupting influence of this novel? Share with me your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. Now, I know that even though the 1960s is not that far away, the truth is that sensibilities were very different then, and people were far more concerned about some things. So I get it that there would be a public outcry about a book that has explicit sexual content. Don't you just love the good old days when some things really mattered? Anyway, the defense argued that Lawrence's novel was not pornography, but a serious work of literature exploring human relationships. The court agreed, and the defense and Penguin Books won. Overnight, believe it or not, overnight, 500,000 copies were sold. The victory marked a turning point in censorship and sexual freedom in British literature. And you know what? I am glad that it won, because Lady Chatterley's Lover is a book worth reading. So what's inside this book? What is it that caused all the uproar? What is it really about? The novel follows Lady Constance Chatterley. She's known as Connie in the novel, and she's married to Sir Clifford. He's a wealthy landowner and owner of Ragby and the coal mines in Tavistock. Clifford, the good man that he is, went off to war. He actually fought in World War I. But like so many others, he came back wounded, and his wound left him paralyzed from the waist down. This renders their marriage sterile, not only physically, but emotionally. Now, after this incident, when Clifford comes home, he's somewhat changed, and he becomes obsessed with intellectual pursuits and industrial progress. He's detached from passion and warmth. And Connie, a woman who is still young, very vibrant, she becomes little more than his personal servant. She's the one who dresses him. She helps him with his books that he's writing. And to be honest, at first, when this just starts in the novel, I did not get the feeling that she minded too much. But after a while, as you can imagine, it took a toll on her. It took a toll on her emotionally and physically. She was exhausted and she just could not go on anymore, and she actually had a breakdown. Now, we have to comment on Clifford's sterility because Lawrence uses it to make a comment. What is Lawrence saying here? Lawrence is using Clifford's sterility to comment on what industrialization had done to society, and specifically the upper class. The upper class, in Lawrence's opinion, had become impotent, just like Clifford, and they had become unaware of the real world and the real people in the world. So sterile had the world or the upper class become that it could not properly produce the next generation. Notice that Clifford's handicap makes it impossible for him and Connie to have children who will inherit Ragby and carry on the family line. This is how Lawrence sees what industry is doing to mankind and what it was doing to England in particular. It was making it sterile and unable to produce human beings who were going to be of real solid value to society. At this point, Oliver Mellors enters the scene. Mellors is the gamekeeper on Clifford's estate. He's working class, so he's rough and ready, but he's deeply connected to the natural world. And even though he is working class, he is very intelligent, and he's well-traveled. But now he has come home to Tavistock to put down roots, as it were, and to spend some time with his child. And the truth is, he's not looking for love. Nevertheless, he and Connie begin an affair. It is one that's both scandalous and transformative. It's very, very transformative for Connie. For Connie, it is not just about physical pleasure, but an awakening, a way of rediscovering herself in a society that had stifled her humanity. There's a scene in the novel when she realizes that it is Mellors that she wants because he is the one who brings her to life and keeps her connected to the real world. This happened when she went on holiday with her sister Hilda. In this passage, it reads that she found nothing vital in France or Switzerland or Tyrol or Italy. She just was carted through it all, and it was as less real than Ragby, less real than the awful Ragby. She felt she didn't care if she never saw France or Switzerland or Italy again. They'd keep. Ragby was more real. As for the people were all alike, with very little difference. They all wanted to get money out of you, or they were travelers. They wanted to get enjoyment, performance, like squeezing blood out of a stone. No, said Connie to herself, I'd rather be at Ragby, where I can go about and be still, and not stare at anything or do any performing of any sort. She wanted to go back to Ragby, even to Clifford, even to poor crippled Clifford. He wasn't such a fool as this swarming holidaying lot anyhow. But in her inner consciousness, and this is a very important point now, in her inner consciousness, she was keeping touch with the other man. She mustn't let her connection with him go. She mustn't let it go, or she was lost utterly in a world of riff-raffy, expensive people and joy hogs. She's realizing that there is nothing in this world that's real. And a lot of the things that people strive for and people think it's real, it's not. Mellors is real. Mellors' connection with the land and with the real people on the land. That's what she wants. That is what brings her pleasure. That's what brings her life. And that's what she wants. Now, as you can imagine, the affair between Connie and Mellors brings about scandal. The scandal, of course, lies in the fact that they crossed boundaries. Because there is a boundary between aristocrat and laborer, a boundary between wife and servant. And interestingly enough, there is a boundary between woman and man. And they have crossed all of these lines. Indeed, the scandal almost broke them apart. There is a very tender scene when they get together in London. I really do love that scene. They get together in secret. This was actually their last time together, and it was quite lovely. But after that, they had to separate for a little bit. They had to remain apart to finalize their respective divorces, or to finalize their respective marriages. And they don't get together again for the rest of the novel, but still, the novel ends with the hope that they will get together again. At its core, Lady Chatterley's Lover is not just about sex. In the 1960s, it went on trial because it was thought to be too sexually explicit and that it spoke too openly about adultery. That was not something that society was willing to accept. And so the book went on trial. But the truth is, to read it for sex is to miss entirely what the book is about. Lawrence uses intimacy as a metaphor for something much bigger. Here are the things he was really talking about through his use of sex. First, there is the critique of industrial society. It seems that Lawrence despised what machines and coal mines were doing to England. He saw people losing their connection to nature and to each other. Clifford, tied to the world of industry, embodies sterility. He's wealthy, powerful, but emotionally hollow. Mellors, on the other hand, represents vitality. He's earthy, instinctual, and tied to the rhythms of the land. He is the gamekeeper, after all. Now, here's a passage that shows what I mean. In this scene, Connie and Clifford are out for a walk. Well, Connie's walking, and Clifford is coming along in his motorized chair. Then the thing breaks down and just would not go any further. Now, here's what happened, because Clifford is the one who is talking here. And he said, "If I could only get out and look at the damn thing," he said, exasperated. And he sounded the horn stridently. "Perhaps Mellors can see what's wrong." They waited among the mashed flowers under a sky softly curdling with cloud. In the silence, a woodpecker began to coo-roo-hoo. Clifford shut her up with a blast of the horn. The keeper appeared directly, striding inquiringly round the corner. He saluted. "Do you know anything about motors?" asked Clifford sharply. "I'm afraid I don't. Has she gone wrong?" "Apparently," snapped Clifford. The man crouched solicitously by the wheel and peered at the little engine. "I'm afraid I don't know anything at all about these mechanical things, Sir Clifford," he said calmly. "If she has enough petrol and oil, just look carefully and see if you can see anything broken," snapped Clifford. Here the author makes a comparison between the sterile, industrial-loving, mechanical-loving Clifford, who sits in his mechanical motorized chair, waiting for the earthy, lively Mellors to get down to the ground to see what is wrong with the chair. The difference between the two men is clear. Clifford, the man of mechanics, and Mellors, the real man of instinct. One belongs to the artificial world of industry, smoke, and pollution, and the other to the real world of earth and living things. The novel also deals with the class question, because Connie, an upper-class woman, risked everything by engaging in an affair with a man society deems beneath her. Lawrence uses this to challenge rigid English hierarchies, suggesting that true human connection exists beyond wealth and pedigree. And of course, there is the sex itself. Lawrence believed that a culture repressed by Victorian morality had severed mind and body. For him, sex was not just an act, but a form of communication, a way to bridge the gap between two people. And that's why he wrote about it so explicitly, not to titillate or sexually arouse others. Rather, it was an insistence that intimacy is central to being fully human. Okay, come now. Tell me, what do you think? Did you read this novel? Have you ever read Lady Chatterley's Lover? What do you think about the novel itself and the comments that Lawrence was making with this novel. I want to stress that this is not a pornographic novel. By no means. It is a serious work of fiction and should be viewed that way. Stylistically, the novel is bold and uneven. Lawrence shifts between lyrical descriptions of nature and blunt, sometimes even crude sexual language. For modern readers, some passages may feel tender, while others come across as almost awkward. But it's important to remember that in the 1920s, this was revolutionary stuff. What shocked censors was not simply the use of words considered obscene, but the fact that Lawrence used them in a serious literary context. He insisted that sex be described honestly, not euphemistically, as something essential and not shameful. That is why the book's reputation as the dirty novel misses the point. Lawrence wasn't writing pornography, as I said before. He was trying to heal what he saw as a deep cultural wound, the split between body and mind, between man and woman, and more importantly, between humanity and nature. That is the very heart of the novel. He was using his descriptions of sex to heal the wounds that he saw in society. Because, let's be honest, sex and sexual desires is probably the most base and human thing there is. So why should we still read Lady Chatterley's Lover? After all, the shock factor is long gone. Explicit scenes no longer scandalize us the way they once did. Well, we read it because it forces us to ask important questions. It really does. We have to ask questions like, how does modern life and modern industry, and especially now when there's just so much technological advancement in this fast-paced life that we are all living, how does it affect our relationships? And also, how does it affect our capacity for intimacy? It forces us to ask those questions, so this novel is still extremely relevant. Lady Chatterley's Lover also forces us to ask, can human connection survive the pressure of class, status, and power? Because the truth is, no matter how technologically advanced we become as a people, we still draw class lines, we have status lines, and we still have power lines. Can those lines ever be erased? Finally, what does it mean to be truly alive, truly alive, in a world that often values productivity over passion? The obscenity trial cemented the novel's place in history as a symbol of free expression, but the novel itself deserves to be remembered for more than just scandal. It is Lawrence's plea for vitality, for a life not only thought, not only worked, but felt. Nearly a century later, Lady Chatterley's Lover still challenges us. It dares us to imagine intimacy as more than physical, as something healing, leveling, and profoundly human. That is why I think it remains a classic, not as a relic of controversy, but as a work still asking us, are we truly living or just surviving? Thank you so much for joining me for this discussion of Lady Chatterley's Lover. If you enjoyed this exploration, please go ahead and subscribe, because it does really help others to find the channel. But more importantly, leave me a comment, because I do really want to hear from you. I love hearing from my viewers. I love to know what you think. And we will be exploring more literary and cultural reviews and historical analyses. Join me next time as we uncover more stories that live somewhere between sometimes and forever. Thank you.